Hi everyone, so now 1 week has passed on the PTR. I've been testing every day for many hours. I've probably played the whole PTR for like 80 hours now or something. And I want to give my full feedback for the first phase before the first patch hits. There are some good things about this patch, and there's also some bad things and some stuff that needs to be fixed, because otherwise it's going to be disastrous. And I believe that Blizzard is already aware of a lot of the feedback that I'm going to give here, but I believe that maybe I should reiterate my stuff in one go and also show it to you guys and maybe have some more input from the comments, from whatever you have to say. I'm going to go over everything, so the Firebird, the Rathma, the leaderboards, the nerfs and the followers. So let's get into it, and let's start with Firebird here. So I believe the Firebird is overall a pretty good rework. It made really clunky and forgotten set much better, and it gave it a very distinct, unique playstyle. I think not everyone needs to like it. It's based around channeling yet again. So this is kind of like the big con here, I would say, because, well, we have Deathwish and everyone is kind of sick of channeling, and now we have more channeling. On the other hand, it's also a very unique, like double channeling playstyle, quite innovative, and it actually doesn't really feel so bad in that regard. So personally, I'm not a fan of channeling builds, but I still enjoy the new Firebird because it has some really unique mechanics. It has a furnace in there, which makes pushing inherently much more fun than most other builds because, well, you can actually fight elites more reliably. And just in general, you have this teleport, you can move around a little bit. So especially for pushing, Firebird is in a pretty good spot. It is rather strong. It's gonna clear like 140 plus probably. And it definitely has something new to offer for the wizard class. So that is pretty amazing. That being said, for speed farming especially, Firebird is really clunky, and I think it should be a bit improved. So the idea behind this combustion effect is that you can like teleport around really fast, and you don't need the Elder Walker for that. But essentially, this effect is not really much different than an Elder Walker, and it doesn't really give anything new to the class. And the only advantage really is that you don't have to sacrifice your weapon slot, so you get the furnace. So you could just as well have Elder Walker in your cube and not care about combustion at all. And yeah, you lose the lead damage, but furnace is also, you know, in the overall grand scheme of things, not really a very solid or very strong choice when compared to something like necromancer weapons. And the overall boost of a furnace versus having nothing is around 2 tiers or so. So this means that yeah, this combustion effect with teleport cooldown is very weak. So just in the overall power level. So the 4-piece bonus is actually very strong. You can actually skip Karini on the Firebirds because it's so tanky with 80% damage reduction. And I believe that this combustion, could be tweaked a little bit to linger on the character, or like to just not drop immediately. Because right now you stop Disintegrate and you immediately lose a combustion, and you don't have this kind of infinite teleport effect. I believe having like a 1 second grace period before it drops would definitely help a lot. Maybe even make it stack faster, just to, you know, increase the fluidity of the build, but that is not really that necessary when it actually would stay for a little bit more. In overall pushing, this would barely buff the build, maybe by like a tier or so, but it would make it much more fun to play with in speed farming. T16 especially is really clunky with this. Even though you have fast teleports, you have to disintegrate on everything first, then you have to hit them with some other skill, which is usually explosive blast, very small AoE. So it doesn't really feel great here. They could also add something like Blizzard to the build and maybe make the Blizzard like travel with you, and then have like this automatic kind of like ignite burst around you whenever something gets hit. So this might be some suggestions to like maybe make a new effect. But I believe if combustion was tweaked a little bit with kind of like this delay, then this would already be in a pretty good spot, at least for pushing and for kind of like some speed farming scenarios. It could be pretty amazing. Let's go over to Radma here. So the Rathma set is actually really cool now, I believe. So it has this minion focus. It has 2 skills that have otherwise been not used at all, pretty much ever. So that is really cool, and I really like that rework. Especially after that, feels very fun to play. It's a very strong build, and it's definitely gonna bring excitement to the class because it's very unique for necromancers. So that is awesome. On top of that, we have potentially a Rat's Killer on our hands. We have potentially a new Foreman meta on the high tiers. We have potentially a new Rift Guarding killer with the Bone Spirit. So Rathma pretty much does everything. And well, that can be a bad thing because there's necromancers everywhere. But on the other hand, this is also, very new and unique, and I don't really mind that it's both using the same set. That's actually pretty cool that they have different playstyles there. On the bad side, the minions are mostly cosmetic, and you can't really choose which revives you want to keep. So when you go into a run, usually you have nice Black Death, and you have to kind of keep reviving because it gives you another Naya stack. And even if you don't play the poison rune, you have to replace the revive sometimes to get this damage reduction effect from the, I don't know what the rune is called. And you can't really keep like the right stuff. So I think it would be cool if you can kind of like target the right minions and then revive them. Maybe you have to like do some special effects or something. But I see that this is maybe a little bit out of scope, and it would just be like nice to have. There are two more severe issues here. One is the Bone Spirit. So we have this up to 30-second travel duration with Defiler's quizzes. And this makes it so that you have to shoot from like many screens away at the Rift Guardian and then hope that you hit. So sometimes you can do that well and everything is fine. Other times you're going to have Choker where you can't do that. Other times you're going to have something like Infernal Maiden that jumps out because she teleports around randomly and things like this. And I believe that maybe the maximum travel distance could be reduced to kind of like avoid these really long off-screen shots. So there is one attempt of kind of replacing this already with this Bracer that gives you up to 9,999 stacks and improves your damage for Bone Spirit. This is actually a pretty good first step because you can actually one-shot Rift Guardians, but on the other hand it's also quite gimmicky and you don't really do anything in the Rift besides trying to keep those stacks and staying alive. So this is, on the one hand you're kind of like active and you have to make sure you actually, don't drop those stacks and you make sure you stay alive. So that makes the playstyle probably better than most other Rift Guardian killers, which can basically AFK until the boss. But it would be great to have a setup be like the best Rift Guardian killer that can also kill elites. We've been experimenting with this, especially with the Cold Rune on Bone Spirit, and we had a setup where you could kill the Rift Guardian in one go and also kill some yellows in the Rift here and there, and that was actually pretty amazing. Also, Bone Spirit feels extremely clunky because it has such a long cooldown. I believe that the cooldown could be reduced just on the base skill. It has 15 seconds cooldown right now, and you have to get corpses to reset it or something. So it is not really very smooth. So even when you try to do like some kind of like speed farming, if that's even possible with Bone Spirit because of how slow they travel, they don't really reset that well. Even with Land of the Dead, even with Messerschmitt's Reaver, you can kind of make it work in something like 90, 95 or 100 even. But that's about it, and it's still a lot of effort for that. It would also be great maybe to have the Bone Spirits kind of do some kind of like minimum damage, so whenever they travel less than 30 seconds you could make it so that they can hit again, so they maybe take like a turn and they come back to the target or something like that. They just go through it and deal damage twice. This would be cool because then you can actually kind of like stand at a distance to the target and you shoot at it, and if you do that at exactly the right distance, it's gonna travel for like 2 seconds, pierce it, come back, and then hit it again for like a 5-second travel damage buff bonus, and then you can kind of like avoid these like off-screen things, and you can actually target the right target, and maybe something like this could help out here a little bit as well. But most importantly, it's Rathma's shield that is the big issue here, because with all this talk about Bone Spirit, Army of the Dead is actually the meta skill, at least for solo and also for the group AoE trash killer. And well, Rathma's Necros are actually 100% invincible. So I've shown this already. It's very easy to do this, and you have permanent squirts, you have 0 toughness, it doesn't matter, you just survive anything. And this needs to be changed. I believe that either Army of the Dead should be completely removed, or there should be a cooldown, or they should just make it into some kind of like maybe 30% damage reduction or 40% damage reduction or whatever, to not have this like crazy interaction here where you're just invincible. I believe that the way that the Radma works right now with this fast resets is really fun. The damage is fine if the invincibility gets removed. It's still on the strong side, but it's not gonna be completely ridiculous. It's gonna be weaker than Bone Spear in Season 22. And overall, I believe that it's actually pretty nice to have this setup. So Rathma's shield definitely has to be addressed, or else, it's gonna be kind of a meme. So let's talk about the God and the Witch Doctor here. Both of these builds have been heavily nerfed, especially the God Demon Hunter. I've already released a video the other day about how I would do it better, so I'm not gonna go into all the details here, but long story short, Basically, the cap is way too low with 2 pierces per target, the damage is heavily nerfed, missile dampening has not been addressed because the Shadow Shot rune still has infinite pierces, so all of it is really pointless besides upsetting everyone. So what I would do is I would cap the pierces to something like 5 to 10. I prefer more on the higher side, because with 10 pierces you can actually kind of like get into a pull and deal some damage. And to compensate, I would actually buff the set to 15,000 or 20,000%, and that should kind of keep the overall power level really strong on the same level roughly, depending on how many pierces you actually do. And this would make it so that Hanging Arrow would be dead for the other builds like Untitled Essence, Marauder, Natalia, AotD. Everything would use Hanging Arrow right now because the other sets haven't been nerfed. They still have infinite pierces with Devouring Arrow. It's just God set that has this limit for whatever reason. And well, the overall balance on Demon Hunter is really shit. And at the same time, it will also buff the God single target damage a lot. So that would be great because, well, Hanging Arrow is kind of like a single target skill, but it's like the greatest AoE potential in the game, and it has no single target damage whatsoever because of this infinite piercing mechanic and this stacking damage mechanic. And on a single target you don't get many pierces, you don't get much damage, and you have extremely long Rift Guardian fights, which sucks. So Witch Doctor is overall not really such a crazy nerf. The really bad thing about this is that Witch Doctor has already not been in meta. Witch Doctor is being nerfed like the 3rd time in a row now or something, and yeah, Witch Doctor players are a little bit upset about this, even though it doesn't really change much for groups. So Witch Doctor is kind of like a solo class anyway, but it kind of reduces their potential even more. And while it does improve the overall balance of Witch Doctor sets, it doesn't really seem very reasonable to nerf just the Spirit Barrage and then not nerf any of the other top builds. So yeah, we have seen the change to God DH, but there's nothing with Crusaders, there's nothing with Necromancers. Wizard is also kind of like on the stronger side probably with Twister and stuff. So it doesn't really fit to just nerf Witch Doctor like this. And I believe that, yeah, this would be fine because it improves the overall balance, but it would only really work and be accepted when the other top builds are also reduced, which right now is not happening. So I don't really see the reason to keep these Necromancer and Crusader builds especially at that high power level. They could also just be reduced by like 5 tiers or something, just cut the damage in half straight up for Bone Spear, Rathma, Veiler and Fawn's Bomb. And then, you know, we kind of have like a better balance overall between the classes and also between the builds of those classes. And then some other builds could also be lifted up that are really far behind, something like Hamilton and Sweep, and there's like Helltooth and Zombie Bears, and you know, there's a lot of builds that can really be buffed a lot, and I don't really see why we're not doing that. So why not just, you know, keep buffing those underperforming sets every season by something between like 10 to 50% and keep nerfing those overperforming sets by 10 to 50%, and there you go. Now let's talk about the leaderboards. So I believe overall the set leaderboards are really amazing. So you have this drop down menu here, you can select which set you want to do, and it all has their own 1000 spots. This is really cool. So this really brings back a lot of really old forgotten builds that, you know, no one would ever touch because they're so bad, and it doesn't really matter too much at what performance they are, and that's really amazing. But on the other hand, there are also some classes, especially Monk and Demon Hunter, that have kind of like the same playstyle or similar playstyle on multiple leaderboards. So for Demon Hunter, this is actually the worst case here because 5 out of 6 of those leaderboards would be Hanging Arrow with the current patch, if those changes that I mentioned above are not implemented, and this is absolutely terrible. So obviously something like this has to be addressed. So we have all these cool sets that do something special, but well, we would still play the same build for everything. And Monk is kind of like in a similar spot here. So we have Tempest Rush for Senboku, we have Tempest Rush for POJ, we have Tempest Rush for Inners, and potentially even the no 6-piece set, but that has Slave of Light. So I'm not sure about that one, but yeah, there is basically the same thing here. And there's also other classes like Helltooth and Arakia that are very similar with Firebirds. There is Necromancer with Pestilence and Jargul. And in general, I believe that now that we have those leaderboards, there should be a bit of a bigger focus to actually make the meta builds be kind of like their own distinct playstyle, instead of just another leaderboard to get onto with the same build basically. Also, since we have so many builds to push now, we really need to do something about augments. Augments are absolutely horrible to farm, especially when you play more than, let's say, 2 builds in a season or so. To fully augment a character, you need something like 20 hours or so if you're efficient. And yeah, it's just a lot of grinding. You can usually get your gear done much earlier than that, at least when you play multiple builds and you have to like re-augment multiple sets at the same time with the same character. So I think there should be some updates to augments, so just give us more options, or maybe when the greater rift tier that you're doing is significantly higher than the gem, let's say the tier is like 50 tiers higher than the gem, you get like double the upgrades, for example, or maybe you can pay even more gold for another 1 or 2 upgrades, or you get some other thing that you can do in the run where you get more upgrades. Maybe you can like not click a pylon. For every pylon you didn't click, you get 1 more gem up. I don't know, some ideas. I believe we need much more gem ups. Maybe there could also be some kind of like farming activity where you can find legendary gems that are already, you know, like level to 50 or already level to 100. So you can you know, shortcut it and just speed up this process, because augments is not really fun to farm when you're already done with your gear, when you don't really want to farm more paragons. It's just a chore and it feels really bad. Like personally, I have so many builds to push now. You know, when you main one class, let's say Demon Hunter, and I want to push like, let's say 4 or 5 different leaderboards, I would have to augment all of those, and it's just not happening. So with this little augment rant out of the way, let's address some urgent issues as well. So there is some bug that makes some, like the wrong clear show up on the wrong leaderboard. I don't know why this is happening. I've seen 2 cases of that out of, I don't know, it's like 100 or so I've looked at. So there is definitely some issue here that needs to be found and fixed, because otherwise you're gonna have the wrong people on the wrong leaderboard, and that's gonna be quite bad. Also, there is no rank pop-up when you clear a run, so you can maybe get not on the overall leaderboard for your class, but you can get on like, you know, any kind of rank for, let's say, Natalia's Vengeance, but there's no pop-up for, okay, you have reached rank 12 with Natalia's Vengeance, and you don't even see that message in chat either. So you see it for other people, but you don't see it for yourself. So I think this should be fixed, because, well, you cleared and you have like no celebration, you have like no notification, you have nothing, and it kind of feels bad. You know, you just have to open the leaderboard and then check where you are, and it just feels completely unintuitive compared to what we're used to. And finally, let's talk about followers here. So I already made a video where I explained the systems and also gave some of my ideas here. In general, I really like that there is some focus on followers now, because it buffs group play. Personally, I'm not really a big fan of having strong followers, but I like the effect that it has, so that it kind of brings solo and group closer together. It gives you more character customization. So these things are great, but on the other hand, there's also way too little customization that can be done with those. And there's going to be essentially cookie cutter builds for pretty much everything. There's going to be like this one regular Enchantress T16 build, and then there's going to be like this one Enchantress pushing build, and there's going to be this one Scoundrel pushing build. And Templar is probably not going to be used for anything at all, because he kind of sucks, and that's about it. So the big issue is that many items don't work for the followers. The CDR doesn't work for the followers. You can't make them survive anything, besides in some very special cases where you play like a Frenzy Barb and you buff them with Warcry maybe, and then yeah, they might survive when you speed farm GR 100s, because everything just dies as soon as it enters the screen. But if you push, you have no way to make them survive anything, and that is really sad. So we have these Templar relics, we have 50% cooldown, you have the all skill stuff that could kind of give you some more customization, or reward you for actually building a really strong follower and maybe even augmenting it and stuff like this. And maybe also, you know, have the choice between, okay, do I stack all these toughness items with stone gauntlets and a killer or whatever, or do I rather go Gloss of Worship and Tarasha chest for the attack speed and stuff like that. But right now there's not really any choices, so you just give them whatever pretty much, as long as they have the Nemesis, Oculus Ring, Immortality Relic and the flavor, you're good to go. And then maybe you put on like a Buritza or a Sultan after Planning Zand for a little bit of crowd control on the follower, and that's about it. So overall, very sad thing. And the amulet list is also way too short. There are a lot of really useless or almost useless items that could easily be added to this amulet list because they would never be used on a regular build, but they could still potentially provide a small benefit. And it would be cool to have kind of like the choices between those small benefits in certain situations. So some suggestions here, especially in the boot slots, we have boots of disregard, we have iron toe mud sputters. So there's stuff like this, maybe some braces that do something. And overall, we also just need more items that have kind of like small utility effects that could be added as well in the future. Also, legendary gems don't work. I believe all legendary gems should work because that would make it quite interesting. You would have kind of like a choice to give it like an AotD gem and make it maybe deal some damage in your speed farming, or you could give it like really tanky gems like esoteric, mutilation, molten wildebeest, and then use cooldown relic instead of the immortality relic because suddenly the follower would survive. And maybe just give him like the typical like toxin and ice blink and maybe a gogok, or so in case that cooldown would actually work. So there would be some kind of like options here to explore. But right now, yeah, it's really pointless because only 2 defensive legendary gems work, and those are not enough to carry the toughness on their own. So you have to use the immortality relic anyway. And lastly, the amulet slots are also kind of in a weird spot now. So you put Flavor of Time on your follower now. So many builds used to wear that one, and now they have to look for a new amulet. So there are immunity amulets, there are Hellfire amulets, and there's a Squirt's Necklace. And that's about it. So usually you won't really go for Travelers if you didn't have it before because, well, you also have to give up a ring. So it's going to be basically those 3 options. And the immunity amulets have the issue that most of them roll really bad stats and they have like attack speed on there or cooldown or whatever, something that you don't really want. You can't go for this crit elemental combo in most cases. So that should be addressed to kind of like at least have an option to wear those if you like. There's only the cold one, I think, that can roll anything, and the others always have some weird stats. Similarly, I think Join could be updated, so that is kind of like in the same ballpark, so you can have Join on yourself instead of on your follower like you used to, and it also has bad stats. You always have to have cooldown or main start on it, and I think just bringing those amulets on the same level as other amulets would be great. And also an update to Ubers would be amazing. So I've actually made a video about this pretty much right before the PTR. So I didn't know that it was coming in that way. But yeah, I guess it's more relevant than ever. So Uber farming with Hellfires is extremely boring. It's extremely unrewarding. So that needs to be changed. Uber should be hard. Uber should feel, amazing to kill and like an accomplishment, and then give you like lots of awesome loot and let you craft many Hellfires. Maybe update Hellfires in general, because I believe that they are not really quite competitive with something like Flavor and Squirts to begin with. And the fact that some people wear those on the PTR right now is simply out of necessity because, well, the Flavor is on the follower. Lastly, with Nemesis and Flavor being on the follower, that also creates some other issues for pushing. So basically everyone needs to fish for like some super juicy 1 floor festing woods now, where best case you find like 3 or 4 pylons on the same floor. You click all those pylons, you have like 9 elite packs, you click the conduit after everything's like half dead, and you spawn the boss from like 40% progress, you go straight to 100%, and that's about it. So fishing is going to be very extreme now, and I think this is a bit too much. Conduit pylons are way too strong, and I think it could be toned down a bit. I think there could be more pylons added to the mix, or I think they could maybe make all pylons spawn guaranteed in a GR, or kind of guaranteed, with the current limitations that we have, so that you can't stack up these pylons and you still have to like explore pylon spawns regularly and stuff like this. But maybe just kind of like make it more consistent to get 4 or 5 pylons in a rift, and not just okay, in one you get 2 and the other one you get 4, and in some cases you get like 1 and then you get like a plague tunnel that doesn't have a pylon spawn spot anywhere, and you have to go through the entire floor if you try to find a second pylon. But yeah, essentially there also need to be some more pylon spawn spots in many maps, just to make it more consistent and not have you lose the pylons on the way. Pylon spawn mechanics are very complicated, so I don't want to go into all the details here, but there should be some updates to those as well, especially now with the Flavor on every single build. We're going to have insane pylons in pushing, and the fishing potential has gone up a lot for many builds, and I think that should be addressed in some way. Yeah, so that's about it for my feedback. Let's see what will happen. and I'm quite positive that it's going to be a pretty cool patch. So we'll see about the other change that will be addressed. So obviously, you know, the Tarasha Firebird combo is gonna be changed, and I also believe the Radma's shield is gonna be changed. So these are kind of like the obvious fixes that have to be done, and then we'll see about, you know, what kind of updates you're gonna get for the God, for Firebirds, for the followers, and yeah, it will just be amazing to get like more stuff into this patch, and there's still some time for it. So I'm quite optimistic. And maybe there's more stuff that I missed now. So let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about my thoughts here, and maybe you have some other things to add. So I'm quite excited to hear about it. Hope you liked my video. I'll see you guys next time.